I, like many other children, have always been fascinated by the idea of a zombie apocalypse. Growing up in the late 2000s and early 2010s, zombie media was everywhere. I watched my brother play Red Dead Redemption, The Undead Nightmare, The Last of Us, and on occasion he'd even let me play Black Ops Zombies. I mean, I wasn't very good. My 7-year-old brain said, "Oh no, broken window!" as I broke the train and then got mollywopped by the horde that was already within spitting distance. By the time I was finally old enough to competently play video games and not shit myself at the thought of being ripped apart by the jaws of my former friends and family, the zombie flood had already passed. But that didn't stop me from enjoying The Last of Us, High School of the Dead, Dying Light, The Walking Dead TV show and comics, and of course, TellTale's Walking Dead. For simplicity, when I refer to The Walking Dead, I mean TellTale's for the rest of this video. Unlike the other games, I hadn't actually watched my brother play this one. He had it, and he asked me questions about what choices he should make, but I didn't pay much mind until after beating The Last of Us with a friend. I needed to fill the void that The Last of Us left behind. Once I got my own Vita well after Sony abandoned the system, I pilfered the copy my brother had, and I fell in love. As of writing, my first playthrough was close to 10 years ago, and it spurred me on to the rest of the Walking Dead universe. Hell, I became a fan of such remarkable magnitude that I rebought seasons 1 and 2 when A New Frontier came out because I had to preserve my precious save file. And then the final season came out, and I didn't play it. Too much time had passed. Combined with the sour taste that A New Frontier left in my mouth, I didn't think it'd be worth playing. But it's been gnawing at me ever since. And that's why I replayed the first game. I felt like I owed it to 12-year-old me to finish the saga. I also wanted to see why the story of Lee and Clementine made me bawl every single time I played it. After replaying, the short answer is the writing. But what does that look like in the context of the game? Well, it looks like Larry in a locker. Before I explain why the Larry scene slaps, I need to clarify that the gameplay here isn't exactly riveting stuff. So a Telltale game will live and die based on how well it can make you believe that you're actually shaping the story. Good writing in this game goes hand in hand with how believable it can make the plot and characters, since that is what's going to give the weight to the decisions that you choose. This stipulation is added on to the standard challenge that comes with survival-oriented zombie media, making you believe that the world gets ravaged by zombies that shamble at a pace equal to that of Grandpa's morning walk could actually happen. The characters need to feel like actual people reacting in realistic ways when shit hits the fan. This brings us to episode 2. Lee, the player character, and Clem are stuck with the lovely folks they happen upon at the drugstore in episode 1, because going out alone with an 8-year-old isn't really the best idea. The lack of food drives the tension between Lily, the group leader, and Kenny, your determinate best friend and family man, as they bicker about how things need to be run. There's also the previously mentioned capital A asshole with a literal bad heart, Larry, who hates your guts no matter what you do, and also Doug or Carly grappling with some survivor's guilt after choosing between them at the end of the last episode. Between the differing dynamics, the group churns tension thick enough to spread over their imaginary whole wheat toast. Imaginary not because they aren't real, but because they don't have food. Eventually, the St. Johns stumble upon the group and offer to feed them. Given that we're in an apocalypse, that's awfully nice of them. But once the group arrives at the St. John's Dairy, Lee and co. notice a couple of gray flags. The game gives you the opportunity to explore the farm and talk with each of the factions being Kenny and Lily, and get their opinions on the dairy. As the plot progresses, we realize that those gray flags were actually bright, streaming red because the St. Johns are indeed messed up cannibals who try to feed you your loyal homie Mark. And then you get knocked out. Clementine! Lee wakes up disoriented to a chaotic scene of Larry violently yelling and Lily vomiting in the background as Kenny paces all of 4 steps while shitting bricks because the farmers have his family. This scenario initially puts you in the mindset of escaping the cellar with the added flavor of, I need to get out and kill the St. Johns because they killed Mark, and or we need to get out and save Kenny's family. Great, solid, logical chain of events that plays out exactly how you'd expect it. But if that was all, it would be boring. After briefly exploring, Larry's uncontrolled anger causes him to writhe in pain before falling to the ground. A heart attack. Some players celebrate the first time this happened. I did. But then you realize the implications of Larry being dead. Earlier in the episode, the group, and possibly you, learn that unless the brain is damaged, you still reanimate. And trapped without weapons in that cellar, the group is hardly equipped to deal with a walker, especially of Larry's size. In an already dogshit situation, the group now receives an extra flick in the nuts. How do you stop Larry? With this narrative decision, the game realistically and brilliantly shifts your goal to find an answer to this tough decision. Do you kill Larry or attempt to save him? But you don't just make this choice in isolation. There are witnesses who have stake in your decision. So not only are you choosing to help, kill, or save Larry based on your feelings towards him, but you're also directly affecting the other people in the locker. Do you help take away the only family the poor desperate Lily has left to save the group? Or do you force Kenny to bear the burden of what it means to survive in the new world alone to save your own conscience? The entire episode has built up to choosing a side between the two. And, quote,
"You can't be in the middle on this one."
Even with just this setup, the writing is brilliant. Some will make this choice immediately, and others will agonize to the last second. With the implications to Kenny and Lily, Telltale has crafted a multifaceted ethical dilemma about when to take someone's life. But there's one more piece to consider when you make this choice. Clementine. I've purposely skimmed over Clem's presence until now because it's probably the strongest factor in making your decision. Your 8-year-old daughter is watching everything, and the game reminds you that she's taking notes with the overhead text. Can you brutally smash a man's head in front of her, cruelly exposing her to an absolute atrocity in order to keep her safe? Or do you decide to try and save Larry to teach her a virtuous lesson? Show her that her father is not a monster. It is this piece of the dilemma that will influence a hefty number of players, including myself. The game does an astounding job making you care about Clem and reinforcing that you are the parent and must lead by example. Regardless of what you choose, Kenny will still turn Larry into a lovely pile of strawberry oatmeal. The only thing you're left with is how everyone will react to your intentions. A lot of people criticize this, but because I'm a hipster, I will say the futility actually adds to the depth of this choice. No matter what you do, Larry will die. Even realistically looking at the options, I don't think Larry could have gotten out of that situation. CPR isn't exactly going to bring someone back from the dead, only delay the inevitable. And it's not like the St. John's hid any sort of life support device you could nab before he would be dead. What this illusion of tangible outcome does is reinforce that Kenny is a person. It gives him agency. Kenny already made up his mind to kill Larry and is hell-bent on getting to Katja and Duck with or without your help. Larry may stop that. Just because Lee is the player character doesn't mean you get the final word in every situation. And even if the game does give Kenny agency, it doesn't necessarily mean it takes yours away either. On repeat playthroughs, it graces you with a recontextualized choice. Do you side with Kenny because you know this is the best way to preserve your relationship with him and Larry's gonna die anyway? Or do you stick to your morals and help Lily because you feel it's the right thing to do? It's a choice that tests your ideology and whether or not you'll stick with your decision regardless of the outcome. I will say that the recontextualization of this choice only works if the game gets you to buy into the characters a second time, which it does very well, I might add. Nearly every character in this game acts like a real person with their own motivations, hobbies, interests, and flaws. Kenny, as I touched on before, is hot-headed and practical. He's willing to do almost anything for his family, but we also learn through various conversations with Katja, and really the whole story, that he's a big softie. He brought a sick octopus into the vet begging her to take care of it. Aww. Kenny also reacts in a natural way to the walkers during the Sean or Duck choice in episode 1. No one knows what's going on, and of course Kenny helps his son before another's. And then we can visibly see his fight or flight response kick in ultimately ending in him running away and leaving Sean to be grotesquely mauled by walkers. I've seen a lot of people say that they wouldn't have left Sean to die, but let's be honest, do you really know how you're going to act in such an unpredictable situation? This becomes a brilliant through line that, combined with another line about his dad being a mean son of a bitch, constructs a picture of why Kenny gives the finger to Lee if he doesn't back him with Larry, other than technical limitations. It's another death he can hardly handle on his conscience. I'd bet money that his father taught him to bottle up his emotions, forcing him to be tough and do what a man should do, when in reality, Kenny isn't like that. He's not an emotionless pinnacle of Chad masculinity that can make tough calls without taking on some serious emotional baggage. These facets of Kenny justify why he can't bring himself to stop the train and face what happens to Duck unless Lee acts on him. If he does, then his son will die, and in his mind, it's a direct result of letting Sean get eaten. Duck's death is his fault, making it without a doubt the heaviest burden he'll carry for the rest of the story. While Kenny is a stunning example of a multifaceted character, Lee is also incredibly well done. During everyone's least favorite moment of episode 4 when a surprise walker gives him the chop, the game gives sufficient context to understand why he makes that fatal mistake. He's just fought through Crawford, finally taken a nap, and cannot find his daughter. He panics and hops the fence to find her walkie-talkie, and unfortunately checking the street for walkers placed last on the list of most important things. Losing Clem shook him, as it does you and virtually any parent in that situation. Nor was he an ultra-hardened badass apocalypse survivor. That doesn't come until the end of episode 5. Keep in mind this game takes place around 3 to 4 months after the concept of zombies existed in this universe. And yes, he went on runs in Macon pretty frequently, but that was also a small town where walkers didn't appear to roam the streets frequently. Episode 3 shows exactly 0 walkers until the Screaming Girl lures them all out. It's unlikely they encountered close to that many on most of their runs. Other small moments work to develop characters in much more subtle ways. For example, in episode 3, once you meet Krista and Omid, you have the option to talk to them while you find a way to deal with the non-milk-filled tanker. If you ask Krista where she's from, she'll explain she's from San Francisco and that Omid wanted the Great American Road Trip.
Well, he got a little more than he bargained for, huh?
Who the hell is into Civil War history anyway, other than old white guys?
Krista's line comes out so naturally and also drops that Omid is a history nerd like Lee. This confirms that Krista is the more pragmatic and grounded of the two, and helps you care at least a little bit for Omid because he has something in common with Lee. This execution is much more subtle than some option like Lee to ask, "Oh, what are your hobbies?" And then Krista would respond with, "I like blah blah blah," and Omid likes Southern history, because that would suck. I don't think I need to explain why "where are you from" makes so much more sense to ask a pair of relatively normal survivors in a zombie apocalypse traveling alone. Most of the characters develop naturally, but they're not all perfect. None of these are deal breakers by any means, but I can't get a waft of a bad fart and say it smells like roses. For example, Vernon makes a one-off line asking the group if they came from the railroad and then says, "Never mind," when they ask why. We later learn that he saw the impending herd and didn't tell the group, and then he and the rest of the cancer survivors steal the boat. To me, this feels like a really contrived way to ratchet the tension of episode 5. Throughout the entirety of your interaction with Vernon, he not once gives off the vibe that he is conniving or even has it in him to shoot Lee when he finds him in the sewers. So where does he suddenly get the gall to steal the boat from a group that has a young child? A child that he previously talked about taking off Lee's hands and taking care of. It just feels so odd that he would take the boat and leave her behind. And yes, I know about the note. No, I don't think that's good enough. My issue with this line is that it feels like a shoddy patch job to sort of establish Vernon might take the boat, but even then, it reads more like he's saving the news of the herd for when they're out of Crawford and safe. Similarly, in episode 5, Kenny's death, if you save Ben, feels forced. In isolation, it's a beautiful moment. He sacrifices himself to put Ben out of his misery and also pay off the horrible deeds that he's done. The problem is that it comes right after a line about how suicide is wrong and that one must keep fighting no matter what. There's also the context that a little girl that he's known since day 3 of the outbreak has been kidnapped and her caretaker is marked for death. It just feels odd that the family man, Kenny, would sacrifice himself when he really doesn't have to. It again just feels contrived. I think it's arguably worse if Ben dies in episode 4 because then basically the same thing happens, but as a result of an oops moment, though I've never actually seen it myself because I always save Ben. There are other story beats that fall a bit flat, like Molly's reason for leaving, but these are the two biggest, largely non-determined character inconsistencies that jump out, and again, the game absolutely slaps more than it fumbles. It's a combination of subtle and overt dialogue bits that also cultivate the care nearly every player has for Clementine. All of her dialogue fits an 8-year-old. An intelligent 8-year-old, sure, but like most of the writing, it's well justified. It's also incredibly endearing. Just watch this and tell me you wouldn't want to protect her.
How hard can it be?
I'm going to look like a boy.
Shush now.
This dialogue captures Clem's innocence. She's still a young girl, and her hair is something that she worries about in spite of it being a liability. She doesn't cry and scream about it, but we get a reasonable reaction that warms the hearts of just about everyone who played the game. The Walking Dead gives you plenty of opportunities to take care of and bond with Clem. Once you go into the office in episode 1, she cuts her finger while moving the desk, and you get the chance to examine her wound and bandage it up, helping to build Lee as Clem's caretaker and you as well. Similarly, in episode 2, you get a few moments to push Clem on the swing at the St. John Dairy while you catch up with her. Checking in could very easily have been a quick sit-down conversation like it is with everyone else, but this conversation sticks out because it's the only one like it. Pushing her on a swing, like many a father would do for their children, is a subtle way to naturally put you in the position of Clem's caretaker. She's also not just a perfect daughter cutout either, she acts on her own accord. She puts bugs on Duck's pillow at the motor inn to tease him, like many children would, and if you bring her to Crawford, she'll shoot the walker that attacks Molly unprompted. She'll similarly bring Ben to look at her drawings when he first joins the group after losing his teacher or best friend, showing her emotional intelligence and kindness. The writers developed Clementine just as much, if not more, than the other core characters, which allow the player to buy into her being real and protect her. If the player doesn't care about Clem, the choices lose a lot of their punching weight, like Ben at Crawford, who defeat in episode 2, and the agency in stopping her from eating Mark. She is a character, not a MacGuffin to protect. And it's this dynamic that made myself and so many others break out the tissues at the ending. Aside from the stellar voice acting and music, the writing in gameplay and story are superb, even if the circumstances to get there make you raise an eyebrow at plot contrivance. As the player, you have torn up the whole city, determinately cutting off your arm, lost every member of the group, and crossed through a herd of walkers alone, with only a cleaver and or shard of glass to protect yourself, just to get back to Clementine in a desperate attempt to save her before the inevitable happens. And when you finally do get to her and choke the living shit out of her kidnapper, this feeling of relief that Clem is safe washes over you. This is the payoff of the 5-episode-long relationship that this game builds. And then Lee passes out in the middle of a street flooded with the dead as Clem realizes her parents have become a part of the Walker herd. From Clem's perspective, this is harrowing. She's finally found her parents, but only their lifeless, reanimated husks. And as the player, you have to further break her heart by telling her that Lee is about to suffer the same fate as Duck, her babysitter, and her parents. We spend all this time trying to get back to Clem only for us to be ripped away from her again, but this time for good. And by this point, Lee is too weak from blood loss or the infection that he and the player can no longer protect her. Lee is done. The only thing you can do is direct Clementine and pray that she can make it on her own. You then give her a version of the tutorial that Lee had in the police car in the beginning of the game. This execution of full circle storytelling can only be done in a game because you are the player character, you are driving the story, and in this scenario, you are the one desperately trying to impart as much wisdom on Clem as possible in the few minutes you have left to do so. Every dialogue option becomes precious because it's the last interaction you will have with her. it is the last time you will get to teach and nurture your daughter. The final decision to have Clem shoot or leave Lee shreds any composure you have left. Watching Clem leave Lee's delirious body alone, or witnessing Clem's face as she pulls the trigger followed by silence, hurts. This game leaves you in silence. No cheesy goodbye, no chance to say I love you, and no peace of mind on where Clem is. Nothing. Lee is gone, and so are you. This ending gutted me when I first played this game at 12 years old, and now that I'm older and more able to understand the extent of Lee and Clem's bond in tandem with their tragedy, I'm just left in awe at what Sean Vanneman and the writing team at Telltale were able to pull off. This story is absolutely beautiful, and while I do have a hefty chunk of nostalgia that contributes to my enjoyment of this game, my fondness for The Walking Dead isn't unfounded. It's rooted in how masterfully it drops you into a group of believable survivors that evoke genuine emotion and distress. I've read all sorts of forums about this game, about why it's bad, mid, or the best game ever, and I can understand a lot of the reasons, but at the end of the day, there is no denying that this game tells a nuanced story that allows the player to inject themselves directly in the center. Sure, you aren't in full control of the narrative like some of the marketing would lead you to believe, but it does enough to fool you into thinking so during the first playthrough. After that, I think it's best to accept this game for what it is. A story game on a finite track with ups and downs that eventually end with a heart-shattering goodbye between two characters that touched nearly everyone who played it. Hey everybody, if you made it this far, thank you so much for watching. I really appreciate it. I'm the Luscious Luigi, and as I'm sure you can tell, The Walking Dead really does mean a lot to me. It played a very pivotal role in my middle school years. There was a whole lot about this game I didn't get to talk about too much, like the voice acting and the music, but I mostly focus on plot here and character. But by all means, leave your thoughts in the comments. I'd love to hear what you guys have to say. I also want to give a big thank you to the Audacious Otter, as they are known on my podcast, Nonfiction Thoughts, because they helped me edit the script. If you enjoyed what you saw today, I will be making more. I just upload slow. I'm dealing with college and also work at the same time, so it's coming, just slowly. Have a happy, healthy rest of your day. Thank you again so much.